Ever get that feeling that the world around us is sort of pushing us in, certain directions that maybe don't feel quite right?
Like we're just bombarded all the time.
Exactly, like with a certain image or maybe a set of priorities that aren't really ours. Well, today on the deep dive, we're gonna dig into those feelings. We're looking at a really fascinating, quite thought-provoking book, The Age of Monkeys, by Dr. Mustafa Mahmoud.
Yeah, and this exploration, it's based on Dr. Mahmoud's actual book, Onyesco, and
Yeah.
the cover, well, clearly shows Onyes as the author and the title, Usiai Scary.
Right.
And what's interesting, too, is that we're actually looking at the E.C. Terry, so the 5th edition.
Oh, wow, 5th edition.
Yeah, published by E.C. Atuchari in Cairo. It says so on another page. So clearly, a work that's resonated, it's been around, and people have kept reading it.
Definitely. And our mission, really, for you, the learner, is to properly get into Dr. Mahmoud's perspective on, well, our modern world. We want to unpack his core arguments, see the sometimes surprising connections he makes between, all these different parts of life and society.
Yeah, it's about getting a new framework, perhaps.
Exactly, a new framework. Maybe even one that challenges you a bit to understand the complexities we face. Okay, so let's dive in. He starts somewhere quite specific, doesn't he, with the modern perception of women. He sees that as a key indicator of this whole Age of Monkeys idea.
It's fascinating, yeah, where he kicks off. He really zooms in on this shift, this big change in how women are viewed. He points specifically to this term, Kudo, the sex woman, essentially appearing in modern Arabic dictionaries.
The sex woman.
In dictionaries, yeah. And for him, that's not just, adding a word. It signals a real modern preoccupation with a woman's physical attractiveness. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the sort of cultural priorities behind that.
Absolutely. And then he describes how this plays out, right? In how women are depicted, the heavy makeup, the clothes, this intense focus on just the outward appearance. The surface level stuff.
Yeah. And he asks this really pointed question, is all this artificiality, is it really progress for women? Or could it actually be maybe a step backwards? Fundamentally, what do you think about that?
Well, that's a huge question he's raising. And Dr. Mahmoud, he connects this constructed image very directly to consumerism. He basically suggests women are increasingly presented almost like commodities. Their value gets tied up in these, fleeting trends, these superficial beauty ideals pushed by advertising, by media. Just think how much marketing focuses on that external stuff, creating desires for products, promising allure.
Right. It's relentless pressure, isn't it, to fit some external mold. And Dr. Mahmoud contrasts this heavily with what he sees as a deeper, more, authentic femininity. He really stresses the importance of inner qualities, character, intelligence, compassion, things that go way beyond just how someone looks. It really makes you stop and think about what we actually value.
It does. Now, this is where it gets broader, because from this specific point about women, he kind of pans out to critique the whole modern era, which brings us to that striking title, Chiaroine and Came the Age of Monkeys.
Indeed. And if you connect that title back to what he was saying about objectification, it suggests this wider regression, doesn't it? Towards more primal ways of being. And then Dr. Mahmoud gives this really detailed breakdown of the environmental damage he sees as just defining this age of monkeys. He talks about, nature losing its purity, rivers choked with chemical waste, seas polluted with nuclear waste. It's quite a grim picture of our planetary impact.
It really is. And he keeps going, doesn't he? He talks about the air, too. Lists all these pollutants from factories, cars, carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, nitrogen oxides, ozone, lead, all of it.
Just imagine living in those overcrowded cities he describes. This constant suffocating smog.
Yeah, he mentions the struggle just to breathe clean air and more people getting sick from it. Makes you really appreciate something as basic as fresh air.
And what he finds particularly disturbing is how this all ripples outwards into our food.
Oh, right, the food supply.
Yeah, he highlights pesticide contamination.
Yeah.
It hits insects, then birds, then animals, and ultimately it ends up in us, in the human food chain. It just hammers home how connected everything is. Our actions have these huge knock-on effects.
Even on our dinner plates. And it's not just the physical environment either, is it? He talks about sensory overload.
The sheer noise. Machines, cars, phones, TVs. It's constant. And then the visual noise, too, adds everywhere you look. It's like being constantly bombarded, assaulted almost.
So how does all of this environment, this sensory bombardment, how does it actually affect us as people? our connections. Dr. Mahmood has some pretty strong views on that, on the erosion of human connection and values.
He does. He suggests there's been a real decline in, well, what he sees as essential human qualities. He talks about less genuine affection, less empathy or mercy, less chivalry, less moral purity in the modern agricultural humans, he puts it, compared to the past.
Though you have to wonder if maybe there's a bit of looking at the past through rose-tinted glasses there.
Well, yeah, that's always a risk, romanticizing the past. But his core point about a potential shift in modern values, it's definitely worth thinking about, isn't it?
Yeah. He seems to argue that modern life itself, with all its noise and temptations, just pushes us towards, well, superficiality. We get fixated on buying stuff, chasing quick thrills, maybe losing sight of deeper relationships or more meaningful pursuits. Does that ring true for you, observing things today?
It certainly raises questions about our priorities, yeah.
Yeah.
And Dr. Mahmood also looks at how media and tech play into this. He specifically calls out cinema and television.
The media influence.
Yeah, as these powerful shapers of how we see love, how we see relationships. He notes this questioning of traditional marriage, the rise of maybe more temporary, fleeting connections, often echoing what we see on screen. It makes you think about how subtly media can mold our expectations, our desires.
It's almost like he's saying we're absorbing these narratives without even realizing it, which then leads into his pretty provocative argument about reason losing ground to our more base instincts.
Okay, let's unpack this. It feels potentially controversial.
It is striking. His assertion about the growing power of Soche, which, translates roughly as base desires, lust, appetite in today's world. He argues that while we humans have intellect, willpower, insight, all these higher faculties, we often just don't use them. We give in too easily to our more, primal urges. How do you see that balance playing out? Reason versus desire?
It definitely feels like a constant tension, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And Dr. Mahmood takes it further, suggesting this unchecked chase after desire leads to a kind of, he calls it servitude.
Servitude, wow.
Yeah, like we become slaves to these urges, always needing that next hit of gratification.
And the paradox he points out is that getting what you want, satisfying these desires over and over, doesn't actually bring lasting happiness. Not really.
No. He argues it often just leads to feeling tired, bored, and then this constant craving for something else, something new, just to quiet those urges for a bit. It sounds like a pretty exhausting cycle.
It does. Which brings us nicely to his thoughts on love and spirituality. He makes a really important distinction, doesn't he, between what he calls real love and just lust or desire.
Precisely. He draws a clear line between true love, qui, which he says is rooted in compassion, in mercy, que, qualities he thinks elevate us, create real connection, and he contrasts that sharply with qui, which he sees as fundamentally self-centered, all about immediate gratification. Is maybe the difference between giving and taking.
Giving versus taking. Yeah, I like that. He emphasizes that true love, for him, it's about giving, selflessness, genuinely caring about the other person's well-being, which is totally different from that ego-driven desire where it's all about what's in it for me. It really prompts you to think about the why behind our interactions.
It really does. And this leads Dr. Mahmood towards asking where we can find true, lasting fulfillment. And here he brings in a spiritual dimension. He stresses how important it is to connect with something beyond just ourselves, maybe a higher power. He suggests real contentment isn't found in those fleeting material pleasures, but in seeking a deeper meaning. He specifically references divine qualities like mercy and compassion as sort of guiding lights in that search.
And he criticizes the modern habit of focusing almost entirely on the physical, the material side of relationships, right? While forgetting the spiritual, the emotional connections that he believes are absolutely vital for strong, lasting bonds.
Exactly, neglecting the deeper stuff.
So when we put all these pieces together, the view on women, the environment, relationships, desire, spirituality, where does Dr. Mahmood leave us? It feels like a call for some serious self-reflection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think his main message, the big takeaway, is really a strong call for introspection, for self-awareness. He's pushing us to really look at the values and priorities driving modern life and ask, are we actually progressing in the ways that truly matter for, human flourishing?
He really challenges that default assumption we have, doesn't he? That we're always moving forward. He suggests that maybe in some really basic areas, our relationships, our ethics, our link to nature, we might actually be regressing. It's quite a sobering thought.
It is. Ultimately, he's emphasizing We need to look past the shiny, superficial stuff, the immediate gratification that's everywhere, and try to reconnect with deeper, more enduring human values. Find a sense of purpose that's, well, better than just the material world.
So for you, the learner, just to kind of wrap up Dr. Mahmood's The Age of Monkeys, he offers this really powerful critique of modern superficiality, sounds the alarm about environmental degradation, examines how our human connections might be fraying, argues that our base desires are maybe taking over our reason, and ultimately he calls for a more thoughtful, meaningful, maybe even spiritual way of living.
Yeah, this deep dive into his work, it definitely gives you a unique lens. A challenging one, like you said, to view the modern world and, well, a lot of the problems we're facing. It really encourages looking beneath the surface.
And it leaves us, I think, with a final thought to chew on. Reflecting on everything Dr. Mahmood argued, where do you see his points reflected in society today? And maybe more importantly, what could be the path towards a more balanced, more genuinely fulfilling future for us and for the planet? This has been really eye-opening, digging into the Age of Monkeys. What parts of this will you keep thinking about?